Camille here. I'm the owner of Broadwick Fibers. We specialize in super chunky, hand-dyed and felted merino wool yarns. We've been getting a bunch of pattern requests off the back of our YouTube videos for our blankets, for scarves. So I just wanted to take a minute and show you guys how to make this simple stockinette stitch infinity scarf. Whoops. Just like this on. All we're going to need for this scarf today is a flat work surface, 1/2 kilogram or 0.5 kilograms of our super chunky merino wool yarn, and our hands. The other tool that you might want to have is just a needle felter and felting mat. This isn't a complete necessity, but you can buy them on Amazon if you want one. So, just one quick note before we get started on the type of yarn you decide to use for your super chunky knitting project. I really would encourage you to use actual yarn and not just roving. If you don't know the difference between yarn and roving, roving is essentially just raw sheep's wool that's been washed and then it's been combed so all the fibers face the same direction. But that's literally all that's holding this strand together. So it's very delicate, it rips really easily, it's going to shed a lot and pill quite substantially, which especially for a scarf is just not practical and not ideal. This is something that you're going to be wearing and taking out with you, so you really want it to be a little bit more durable. And that's why I would recommend using actual yarn instead of roving. The two words that you want to look for when you're shopping for your yarn are felted or spun. Our yarns are felted, and you can find them on our Etsy shop or at www.broadwickfibers.com. To begin, we're just going to start by forming a simple slip knot. You want to leave maybe about a 4 to 5 inch tail off the end, and you want your slip knot to be nice and loose, comfortable enough to kind of wiggle your thumb and your forefinger around. The great thing about this super chunky scarf is that you only need 4 stitches. So to make these 4 stitches, you're going to cast on or chain stitch another 3. You're going to grab this working yarn in between your thumb and your forefinger and pull up a loop. And that's going to be your second stitch in your chain stitch. So you've got your initial loop and your second loop. Grab the yarn between your thumb and your forefinger and you're going to pull up a 3rd loop and then a 4th loop. And that's your beginning chain stitch or cast on for your scarf. At this point, you're going to go ahead and lay this yarn and chain stitch flat on your table. So to work the body of the scarf, you're going to take your working yarn and flip it up over the top of your knitting just to get yourself situated. And then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be knitting into these top ridges of your tiny chain stitch. So this first loop counts as your first ridge. So what you're going to do is you're just going to take that yarn and you're going to put your finger down into the loop and you're going to pull up another loop. Then you're going to find your second ridge. And again, you're going to grab down into that second ridge and pull up another loop. You're going to do that with your 3rd ridge, and then also this last little 4th ridge. You want to make sure you don't miss it because it's right up against that slip knot. And you're going to pull it up. And that's your first row. So for this particular scarf, we're going to want to do 12 rows just like that. So we're going to take our working yarn, pull it up over the top of our knitting, and repeat for our second row. So you're just going to grab down into that loop and pull up another loop. Grab down into the loop, pull up your second loop. 3rd loop, 4th loop. Take your working yarn, flip it up over the top, and make a loop. This is your 3rd row. So we're just kind of continuing on like this until we have 12 rows, and that's going to be the body of our scarf. And like I said, this is a really great project. It doesn't require very much yarn at all. And it's just super quick and easy. It makes an awesome gift. It's just a really fantastic little scarf. It's super warm because it's merino wool. It's just a great little project. Let's just double check that's 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we just need 2 more. You can easily do more than 12 and you'll have like a nice long scarf. You could double wrap it if you wanted to make a longer one, but 12 is kind of the minimum. There we go. So now we're ready to finish the scarf. So what you're going to want to do is grab 1 loop into each finger and you're going to flip your knitting over and give it a little tug on the way to make it longer because that'll make it easier for you to work with. So you're just flipping it over this way and you're going to lay it flat. So basically what you're going to have when you're done is 4 live stitches from your most recent row. And then you have this other end where you cast on and started with. So what we want to do essentially is make your cast on live stitches and then we're going to connect them. For those of you who are really avid knitters, we're basically going to use something called the Kitchener stitch to make an invisible seam in between the 2 ends of the scarf. So you're going to start by just taking that end and you're really essentially just untying your slip knot. And it's kind of going to be a little confusing on when to stop, but you just want to stop when you have 4 live stitches. So right here, guys, that's your first live stitch, just like that. It's kind of just this hanging piece, but that right there is your first live stitch. So you've got 1, just keep kind of unwinding the yarn. You'll get to your knot that you made. Just untie that, pull it back through. So now you have 1 live stitch, 2 live stitches. Now you have 3 live stitches, 1, 2, 3. And there's your 4th live stitch. So you can kind of see, you've got this one first, which kind of doesn't look like a real one, but it is for our purposes. 2, 3, 4. So now you're ready to connect these 2 pieces together. So you want to make sure that you've got your stitches flipped over and facing you from your top half of your scarf and your bottom half of your scarf. So the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to take this piece of yarn that was originally a part of your initial cast on or chain stitch. And you're going to take it and you're going to tuck it up underneath that first loop and pull all the way through like that. And then you're then going to take that same piece and you're going to tuck it into the first stitch on the top half of your scarf. So this is the first adjoining piece of the Kitchener stitch. Now after that, we're going to do 2 things always. We're always going to knit into 2 loops. So we're always going to go into 1 loop and out of the other. They're always going to be on the exact same side of the scarf. And you're always going to start by going into the last loop you came out of, which is this loop. So watch and you'll see what I'm saying. So we're going to go into this first loop on the bottom half of the scarf and out of the second loop on the top half of the scarf and pull the yarn through. Then when we move into the top half of the scarf, we're going to go into this last loop we were working on and out of the second loop on the top half of the scarf. So if you can see what I'm doing, I'm just kind of seamlessly joining the 2 sides of the scarf together. So now we're going to go into the second loop on the bottom half of the scarf and out of the 3rd loop. And then we're going to go into the second loop on the top of half of the scarf and out of the 3rd loop. Into the second loop on the bottom half of the, into the 3rd loop on the bottom half of the scarf. And then you're going to want to go out of the 4th loop. This is where it gets a little confusing, guys. If you can see, you've got your loop. You want to make sure that you turn it around so you see this nice stitch form and then you've got this stitch forming. So you just went, I'll start it first. You just went into your 3rd loop and you're going to go out of your 4th loop right there. And then same thing on this side. You're going to go into that 3rd loop on the top half of your scarf and out of your 4th loop. And now your scarf is almost complete. The last step you want to do is go into that 4th loop 1 time and then back into the 4th loop on the top half. And now you've seamlessly joined your scarf together. and you can't see the end anymore. So from here, guys, it's pretty simple. All we've got left is our 2 remaining ends. And so we just kind of want to weave those back in and felt or sew them down to finish the scarf. So guys, I have my felting mat and my felting tool. If you don't have one of these, don't worry, it's not a big deal. You can absolutely just use a needle and thread. But if you do want to invest in one, they're pretty cheap and you can buy them off of Amazon. So what we have is we've got our 2 tail ends of our infinity scarf. What you're going to want to do is basically just, it's felted, so you're really going to have to fray it to rip it. But you want to rip that yarn, that excess yarn, so you only have about 2 or 3 inches. Otherwise, you're going to end up with really bulky edges. So we're just going to rip it right there. So we've got about this much left on this end, and then we'll do the same thing over here on this side. Get those pieces out of the way. So we're just felting that end in. We're just going to kind of follow it around, tuck it back in, and then I like to felt it down on the inside of the scarf so it really is completely invisible. Just kind of going to lay the piece down on top. We're going to felt it right down.